Folks, welcome back to the old classic bookcase. My name is Rudy. You're watching Alpha Investments. The video location where it all started, The Beanie Babies, the Pogs, the repacks. For most of the 10 years on YouTube, investing and collecting in card games was considered a very laughable, non-serious thing. That's why this channel exists. It only exists because the algorithm showed me to you all a long time ago because people attacked it in 2016. And never would I have predicted that 10 years later in 2025, we'd be in a situation where Pokemon and Magic is such a mainstream collectible, flipping, scalping, investing vehicle that the landscape is permanently changed. And I continue to be very, very surprised that going into the end, the fourth quarter, where this is being filmed in September of 2025, we've got about 3.5 months left of 2025. We're 2 years in to the greatest bull market I've ever seen in my life. And historically, in the card world, the market cycles don't really last this long. Usually they flare up and they kind of level out by now. And going into Magic the Gathering with Spider-Man, Avatar, a new Lorwyn set, while we all wait for the reprints of playboxes of Final Fantasies and Bloom Burrows and Foundations and Edge of Eternities and Tarkir, and there just is no sign of a reversion to the old normal. There's no sign of a return to the mean. There's no sign of calibration, of leveling. Pokemon is going into a new block. And historically, in a new block, the first set does the worst. Right? And yet here we are, within weeks of Spider-Man, within weeks of the new Pokemon era, the new ME1. Mega Evolutions. And the outside variables of the rip and ship, the streaming, the cultural evolution of this new era, being fueled by easy money, being fueled by just ill-gotten gains, maybe from crypto. A lot of people think a lot of the money flowing into Pokemon are just not really hard worked for money flowing from the crypto world. Then you factor in, you have endless new accounts and people dumping paperwork and blowing up distributors wanting accounts, and Pokemon is sold at gas stations, at flooring stores. If I need a new kitchen counter, I can buy Pokemon cards. If I need to go to my local Home Depot or Ace Hardware, or my local, it doesn't really matter. You can get Pokemon cards. Go to a used car dealership, there's a wall of Pokemon cards. With the evolution of even comic book stores, video game stores, GameStop, everything moving towards this collectible-centric business model of built around Pokemon cards, how does the future look? We've never had a market where every single business with a license and a brick and mortar wants to sell Pokemon cards. Everybody wants to have Magic cards. Everybody wants to have these cards because there's so much profit to be made. There's so much margin now. And I've been with distribution and doing this now for 15 to 20 years. And this is probably the least enjoyable market conditions I've been a part of. The days of Rudy the Liquidator and easy amounts and distributors are like, Rudy, please, we've got 2,000 collector boxes. Where are you at? What price will you offer? It almost doesn't feel real anymore. The days of a distributor saying, hey, Rudy, we've got 1,000 Lost Origin ETBs. I know 30, 33 a box. ETBs maybe 25. How much do you want, Rudy? $20 an ETB? F you, 22. 21? it's getting to a point where even my psychological standpoint is like, did that really happen? Like there are times when I film these videos and I go to the warehouse or a different location or a different office, and when I'm going through there checking everything, and I see a position that I'm like, oh wow, I built that position 4 years ago. I built that position 7 years ago. I built that position 2 years ago. And I'm like, so that did happen. Because it's getting to the point where I can't visualize a Pokemon market based on the current environment existing in the future. I can't see it. I don't understand how it's going to survive and look. You know, the amount of stores that I've been told that are on lines of credit, borrowing money on terms with distributors that don't even have excess cash flow in the bank. I mean, we haven't had a Magic or a Pokemon product come out in Tank or Bomb. And no, Magic, I don't consider Aether Drift, or I don't consider Karlov Manor. Those aren't collapses, okay? I mean, like a Boulder's Gate situation in Magic, okay? In Pokemon, a Scarlet Violet base, SVO1, or an SVO4 Paradox, or an SVO3 Obsidian. You know, I haven't seen a product come out in collapse in so long. Like, I'm questioning whether or not, like, are these stories? This did happen, right? But how does the landscape look if because we have two choices. We either just continue and accept that this is the normal, or B, eventually a bad product's released or print runs are increased so much, eventually something has to give. And I don't know what that looks like. And then the next thing is, what happens to 1,000 different wholesale store accounts when all of a sudden they all get filled with a bunch of product that they can only sell at a loss, and they don't even have the cash flow to pay for it? What happens when the day comes that rip and ship doesn't work anymore because there's so much of it, it's so cheap? I mean, if a Pokemon, I mean, what happens? Is that even possible? Because the more time goes by, it feels like it's less and less likely that we ever see that again. And then you go online, if you try to discuss this, or always stay away from comment sections of social media, and you read or look what other people's opinions are, the majority of opinions online are going to be the people who are pounding the keyboard saying that the world is ending, worst economy you've ever seen, greatest bubble ever. And yes, the Pokemon market, as we've discussed in some videos, does have a bubbly feel. But it doesn't really fit the characteristics of a bubble, even if it feels like it right now. So terminology and the details of discussing this stuff make for a very confusing environment. It makes people think, oh, well, that person said that, now he's saying that. Oh, now he's... It makes for people who aren't as educated and like to spend time on social media, it makes them confused. They have a tougher time. And instead of reacting or helping them, I mean, they need a hug. We have to be kind to the more dumb Timmies out there, because they're the ones that are angry. They buy the least amount of product, and they're the most vocal. And they are part of the ecosystem, even if they are simply a goldfish with no fins that just sinks to the bottom and just stares. They are still part of the ecosystem. And you should still throw food in the tank and let it sink to the bottom. And if it hits them in the head, they get to eat. There are just people in this market that are just dumb as shit like that. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. I mean, a goldfish with no fins still deserves a mouth hug, but he just has to wait longer. But what happens? I mean, is the reality of this really going to be that over the next 5 years, no matter what happens with the economy, the stock market, interest rates, Bitcoin, this and that, is this just Pokemon moving forward? Because we're on this started with Twilight, Stellar, Surging, Journey, Destin. And now ME1, and of course you got some prismatic and little things, and you got, supplemental sets in between. So we're like 6, 7 products of Pokemon that are just continuous to be insane. And of course, because of that string, it's pulled all these stuff previously up to adjust. And it's weird to me. It's a very unpredicted market that I never saw coming. And I struggle with it, just like in Magic. I struggle to understand that a neon chocobo could be $3,000-$4,000, and yet a Bazaar of Baghdad and a Library of Alexandria from Arabian Nights, I could buy one of each for the same price as a chocobo. Not even serialized, just a neon ink one. And it's very, very confusing. It's very, very non-intuitive. It's behaving in a way that you wouldn't think it would. It doesn't feel like it should be that way, but it is. And that's the world we're in. And the issue is, even if it's the greatest bubble of all time, if this bubble that many people think it is continues for 1 year, 3 years, what if the bubble keeps inflating for 5 to 10 more years? Okay, so what happens? What? In 5 years, a surging spark box goes to $1,000, $1,500, and then the bubble bursts and it goes from 1,500 and crashes 50% back to, what's half of 1,500? $750? Oh wow, yeah, boy. I mean, it's like wow. And again, we discussed this in the other video a few weeks ago. You cannot have a traditional bubble if there are tens of thousands, or if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people around the third rock from the sun known as Earth. If there are humans everywhere that are saying, I'm skipping these sets unless the prices come down. So you're telling me if the prices ever do start to drop, everybody's going to go crazy and scoop it up. Again, that's not the definition of how a bubble works. We talked about this in the other video a few weeks back, and it made people very like, ooh, but it's really starting to feel like this is just the future we're in. And to remind a lot of newer people here, pre-COVID, pre-2020, everybody thought the future of cards was going to be digital and this was all going to be worthless. Then we hit COVID, and everybody said in the Magic the Gathering community, you can't clean your Black Lotus with bleach because it'll damage your cardboard. The future of cards is going to be NFTs and digital and Magic Arena and virtual everything. And, so then we went to that era. And then in 2022, 2023, then we went to the Pokemon printed 2 billion cards. And that's going to be the end of that. Then in 2024, 2025, we went to, now they're scanning with X-ray CT scan machines. And now Pokemon's also dead. Like every single year, every 12 to 18 to 24 months, the internet tells us that certain things are going to happen based on the direction and the attitude of the internet's negative social media machine. And yet every year and every 2 years, the market's wrong. And from an old fart in Florida, I'm the dude who bet my whole life on cardboard. I'm here to tell you, it's absolutely indescribable to explain to new people in this industry and this channel of how wrong the internet always is. It's, that's why there's memes and jokes about the inverse index or do the opposite of this. And because you would think on the internet, when you get a lot of opinions on social media or Facebook or Discord or Twitter or Reddit, and you would get an idea of what the vibe is of the market. But we do live in a time where using that as feedback and looking out in the world and seeing what the chatter is, it actually makes it worse for you. It leads you to make decisions that you probably would be like, whoa, I didn't know it was that negative. And it's led so many people to make choices that they would not have made on their own. And this brings me to the beginning of the video. The reason we're talking about this is because I want to address the basic principle, that is, why do most people never make money collecting or investing in collectibles or in stocks, in Magic, in Pokemon, in any hobby or any collectible basket, any asset class, a Bitcoin, real estate, stocks, the S&P, why is it that the average retail person underperforms or misses out on these big wins or the biggest things in history? That has always been one of the most bizarre topics that I've always thought about, read about, researched about. I always found that fascinating. Even 15 to 20 years ago, when I was a licensed broker through the '08 crash, I remember thinking, it's really weird how in '08, most people who lost the most and locked in their losses selling at the bottom of the crash were retail small accounts. The bigger the account, the wealthier the individual, the better they did. And the better their returns were, and the more likely they were to match the S&P or outperform the S&P or follow it. But the smaller the account balance and the younger the individual, the more likely they were to always be wrong, always miss out, and always chase like the hottest thing in the fad. It was always a topic that eluded me on I can't grasp why that statistic even exists. Why does the age or why does the size of a bank account directly correlate with how good or bad someone's performance or timing the market is? And of course, many of you are all going to say, well, obviously, Rudy, if you have access to a shit ton of money, if things crash, you can buy the dip. That is the most primitive, basic answer, right? But I don't think that's actually the answer. I think it's the fear. I think it's the jitteriness. It's the uncertainty. It's when you have less money, you're more fearful, you're more volatile, you're afraid of losing it all, and you have this mindset, I don't want to go to zero. When people have a lot more money, they tend to have been through a lot. And of course, they tend to, ride things out. They tend to be wired differently. There's a correlation on how the approach is and how the mindset, how they see things. And right now, I, as old man Rudy, is watching the Pokemon world. And I see all these people, all these small businesses. Everybody just wants to have Pokemon and flip Pokemon and flip Pokemon. And is it really infinite? Or is this just going to be the future of Pokemon? Is this really the future blue chip collectible of just endless flipping? Is it really this simple? Is this really just how it's going to be? That's what makes it weird. Is it really that basic and simple that that's just the way Pokemon is and we all have to accept it? I don't know. But anything, are we really going to have a future where everywhere you go, at this point, I'd expect the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A and Taco Bell, and I would expect these places to start having Pokemon packs at the registers or inside near the cashiers or the play areas for the kids. I would expect that, they're just going to start upselling. It's a good way to cross-sell, right? There's a point where it just somehow we feel like we hit some alternative multiverse where this is just a weird outcome. Because again, as much as I want to stand here and discuss why it's a bubble, and I want to discuss why it's not a bubble, both categories have a long list of reasons. And there's no way to tug of war them and merge them together to see which way the future will tip. It is a tipping point. Do I have the book? It is a tipping point. It is a situation where you don't know where the tug of war is going to go. But what I do know is there are tons of people in this market. I would be willing to bet hundreds of thousands just in the United States that don't understand that this is not considered a normal market. Okay? And I don't know what happens if the pendulum ever reverts back. Or it never reverts back, and this is just considered the future of cards, and the rich get richer, and the allocations stay the way they are, and that is just the world we live in into the future. And I can't explain it. It is very bizarre to me. It's uncomfortable to me. Whatever product everybody gets, everybody just makes money and flips it. But, they say things that are too good to be true can't last. That's what they say. I don't know if that's going to always hold true, but it seems like it. If something, you can't have things that are too easy, but, I don't know. The amount of money coming from the crypto world, pushing and moving prices around, the amount of people who scalp to make you guys feel better, it's disorienting, and we don't know what it really means. But I'm here to tell you all, it's fascinating to me how we are in this time where, once again, even in this booming market, a lot of these people are just jumping in and out and flipping things. And I feel like there's going to be a time where you can't just flip things. When I originally did this YouTube channel and I started selling Pokemon or Magic or One Piece or anything to patrons, I told everybody that, you're not, if there's a $100 box online and I sell it to you for $89, you're not going to be able to just flip the box to make money. That's not how it works. It takes time. It takes patience and discipline. That's how this stuff works. That's how it's supposed to work. And then we went into this future world of tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies and rug pulls and money things. And all of a sudden now the idea of 10% a year became this like negative joke. And, in the last 50 to 100 years, that was never considered a negative joke. And now if people pitch to you that Rudy guy has, the goal is 7 to 9% a year, like it's literally laughed at. And it's like, wow, inflation's higher, what a dumbass. And yeah, there are times, and yeah, inflation's terrible and it's a real thing, but that's, the long-term benchmark was always that. It's not supposed to be, 100% a month. Pokemon's not supposed to be going up 10% a month, 100% a year. This is just, it's weird. But I think it's all tied together. I really think there's a more correlation between the crypto, the gambling epidemic, the whole era of flipping, the smartphone, social media, the shorts, the rip and ship. I believe it's almost merged in this new ecosystem, which is wiring everybody a little different. I don't know what that means long term, but I'm here to tell you all as an old man Rudy is just telling you all, it just doesn't feel organic. It just feels weird. It's just, the fuel of this is very powerful, and it may continue for a very long time. And if it does, it does. Even if it's a bubble, it could inflate for the next decade. We could have 10 years of an inflating bubble. I mean, who's gonna get a new Pokemon set? Or what? Pokemon's 30th anniversary pretty soon? Who's gonna fire sale and dump it? And if it does, there's tens of thousands of people wanting to buy a dip at any discount. It doesn't make sense, and I don't know. It's just weird to me that, again, even in the most bullish time, why do most people sell too soon? And why do most people still miss out and lose? Even when you've got a goofball like me who screamed on YouTube for the last 5, 8, 10 years, especially the last 3 years, about buying Magic Collector boxes and buying everything from Scarlet Violet. And before that, I screamed on YouTube for about 10 different videos about Chilling Reign at $80, $90, $100 a box. Nobody would do it, so I said, fuck it, I did it, and I bought the 3,000 boxes. And it's like, are we going to learn from that? Are we just going to pretend it exists? And today, if you go online right now and you buy Surging Sparks for $250, okay, the starting point isn't $100 a box anymore, it's $250. But just because you move the goalposts of the starting, where it starts, it doesn't change anything. And that's a very difficult pill for people to swallow. Instead of a goal, if a collector box came out for $200 in the past, and now it comes out for $600, does that change the long-term trajectory and dynamic of the product? I don't think it does, even though it doesn't feel as good. Because a $250 Surging Sparks box can easily go to 500 to 750 to 1,000. And God help it if they stop printing more of it. And I don't know if it matters if you bought at 250 or if you buy right now from any store in the country. Does it make a difference if you pay 250? Well, Rudy, it's not $100 like it was 2 years ago when never. Okay, so it's a better product. Everybody already wants it. So the market's already given it a stamp of approval. So your starting point's at 250. Your starting point's not at 150. But does that matter? I don't think it does. And I don't know how it unfolds, but it feels like nothing's really changed except the starting point of the prices is higher. And just because the starting point, instead of 150 a box, is 250 a box, does that mean anything? If you still think this stuff's going to go long term, and you think anything from Sword and Shield, everything's 500, 700, 1,000, 1,500, Evolving Skies, 3,000, does it matter if you're starting at 250 a box? Or are you going to protest that because you're not starting at 125 a box? And if it's at 1,000 a box or 2,000 or 3,000, are you? I don't understand that. So it's like the game hasn't changed, but it's like where we all start on the map and where we start on the board. We're not starting at the same starting point anymore, but the path of the game remains the same. And of course, if Pokemon continues this route, where they're not really reprinting booster boxes, they're only printing supplemental things, ETBs, tins, bundles, accessories, ancillary products for big box stores and avoiding distribution markups, and they're like printing less booster boxes. They're printing all these retail accessory items over and over with different sets. They're not even doing the booster boxes as much, which makes the booster boxes even more attractive than they were when they were $100 a box. It's a super fucking weird thing. And that's what makes it confusing, because there's not a clear answer. There's not a clear understanding. You know, we talked about this with Magic Collector boxes. If a box comes out, Final Fantasy at $800, and 1,000 of my patrons buy it for $739 from me, and now it's $1,400. The thing is, buying at the $750 or buying at $800 in the open market was probably not a high-risk move because the market gave it the seal of approval that it's a good product. You don't have... It's a different basket of risk. It has different like implied volatility. The movement is going to be different, you know? And it's just fucking weird, man. I think I'm done talking. No point to this video. I just wanted to think about this stuff, share my thoughts with you guys, and that's it. I don't know, be a patron or watch my videos or thumbs down something. I don't fucking know. Have a great day.